Alright, hey everybody, this is my third video here in relation to my blog, Theology and Life. What I want to talk about today for just a little bit is worship. I want to talk about the music we use in our worship services. Do we use contemporary music, modern music? Do we use traditional hymn music? These are not petty questions because ultimately it goes back to the fact of what are we worshiping God with? So they're good, important questions to ask ourselves. And unfortunately, a lot of churches split over these questions, and that's silly, and that shouldn't happen. But what should we use? So the bottom line here is this. It doesn't necessarily matter. It doesn't necessarily matter whether you use modern music or hymn music, traditional music. But I will say this, that by and large, I mean, there are exceptions on both sides, but by and large, contemporary modern music is relatively shallow. And by and large, hymns are relatively theologically deep. They have a lot of theological content to them. So, in general, I think you can make the statement that it's much better to use hymns or traditional music than it is to use modern. However, that does not mean that is a rule. Okay, I mean you have very good contemporary music that we should absolutely use. My church, Sovereign Grace Bible Church, uses contemporary music as well as hymns. We use Sovereign Grace music that is affiliated with Sovereign Grace Ministries. That is headed up by Bob Coughlin. That is very good contemporary music. That is not only good music, but it's theologically sound. We need both of those. Okay, we need both of those. And then you have hymns that are just, they're old and they're kind of out of date, sort of, but they're also theologically deep. In Christ alone, come thou fount. Others like Be Thou My Vision. Those are amazing and they're timeless. So what should we use? Should we use contemporary or should we use hymns? I don't think there is a rule. I think we should do what we see in John 4, that we should worship God in spirit and in truth. If your church is more contemporary, by all means, be more contemporary. But the only caution is, make it a point to use contemporary music that is theologically sound and not shallow. Much of contemporary music nowadays is very shallow. Okay? We need to have discernment when we do that. We don't need to use music that all it does is make us feel good about ourselves. We need to use music that is theologically sound, that maybe convicts us of our sin, that encourages us to keep moving, or what have you. Ultimately, that it points to God in worship and adoration of Him. It doesn't necessarily matter what worship music we use, whether it's contemporary or traditional. Do what you please, okay? Do what your church wants to do. The bottom line is make it theologically sound, make it God-glorifying music, and let it worship in spirit and in truth. You need to have both of those. If you're not worshiping in spirit, you're not worshiping God. If you're not worshiping in truth, you're not worshiping God. You need to worship in spirit and in truth. And that is a very important thing to do. So again, whether it's contemporary, whether it's traditional, it doesn't necessarily matter as long as we have lyrics that glorify God, that are theologically sound, and that ultimately we are worshiping God in spirit and in truth.